What's up, what's up? I'm Dr. Aumatma, host of Egg Meets Sperm, where we're busting fertility myths, sharing tangible tips for your fertility journey, and bringing you the most knowledgeable guests to support your journey to parenthood. This podcast is for both women and men because getting fertile as fuck is for both partners, don't you think? Remember, just listening to this podcast won't get you pregnant, but following the tips we share just may. Let's get you fertile AF so that you can co-create the family you dream of. And if your partner's not listening to this, make sure to share this episode with your partner. Hello and welcome to Egg Meets Sperm. I'm your host, Dr. Aumatma, and I wanted to kick off this new year with an intro about me, what it is that we do, and how we approach fertility differently so that we can help couples conceive faster without the drugs and injections. So let's kick it off with a little conversation about who I am and what it is that we do in our practice, because I get a lot of these questions on Instagram, and all of the podcast listeners, for those of you that have been listening in and following along for the last year and are super excited to share this content with other people. I've gotten so many messages about how much you love this podcast. I appreciate every single one of you. So thank you for reaching out. Thank you for saying that you're listening, because podcasts are one of those things that you don't actually know who it is that this is listening, who it is that's listening to this content. So I appreciate you reaching out. If you haven't reached out yet and want to connect, please do that. If you want to be part of our online community, there is always a link in our bio, in our show notes, about where you can access that community, and go ahead and join. We'd love to have you. Let's kick it off with what the heck is holistic fertility? I get that message a lot, and my background and training is in naturopathic medicine. Naturopathic medicine is an evidence-based functional approach to health, wellness, and healing. I have applied all of my training to fertility, and I've been focused on fertility for almost 12 years. In addition to specializing and focusing on fertility, I'm also board certified in naturopathic endocrinology. That's a fancy way of saying I'm super duper into hormones. And because I've been doing this work for so long and have helped so many couples, I also train providers to do holistic fertility medicine. If you have a doctor or coach or someone in your life that is supporting you that would like more training, feel free to send them this episode, because they are going to be able to not only get a few tips and learn about what it is that I do, but more than that, they really can reach out and access holistic fertility training so that they can deepen in their ways that they can support you. I'm sorry that I sound a little funny. I have a weird throat, like a sore throat situation going on. So I'm sorry I sound a little funny. This is not how I normally sound. You probably know that if you've been listening to my podcast. But we are going to do this episode regardless, because I really want to kick off this year talking about what holistic fertility is. You guys have, if you've been listening in, you have over 100 episodes of interviews and tips with amazing people that either support fertility directly or do things that shed light on what holistic fertility is and what some of the things are to think about that most of your practitioners are not thinking about. So this is the kind of get started guide to holistic fertility. All right. So what exactly is naturopathic medicine? What is a holistic fertility specialist? In my practice, the way that I think about holistic is mind, body, and spirit. So everything that we do to support fertility, to support optimizing hormones, etc., is always focused on, yes, your body is important, your hormones are important, detoxification is important, but it's also equally important. What kind of traumas have you been through? What is your mindset? What are potential blocks that are making it harder for you to get pregnant? When we can access that level of depth in our process, in our healing journey, we can actually transform our our body on all levels, mind, body, and spirit, to not only get pregnant, but really create the foundation of a healthy family in the future. That's the overview or the big picture. Mind, body, spirit all together create a holistic approach to being able to get pregnant. Also, as naturopathic doctors, we are trained in science-backed, research-backed approaches to healing. So that also applies when we talk about hormones or when we talk about supplements, we talk about herbal medicine, all of the things that are in our repertory as tools are going to support the healing process, are going to support your own body to heal more fully. And the things that we do in our practice are research backed. So when someone says, oh, my doctor said that's not scientific or that's not proven by research, they actually may not know that there are research studies on almost every single thing that we have in our practice. And every doctor doesn't have time to read thousands of research papers to back what it is that they're saying. So they may have learned 30 years ago in medical school that natural medicine is not research based, but it's been 30 years. There's so much research on every single thing that we do in our practice. So that's really important to note. And I have made it a practice for myself to make sure that whenever I am working with someone, we do the things that are best well studied to show that they can help in your exact situation. So this is not the kind of research where we take 20 supplements and say, hey, every fertility couple should take these 20 supplements because that's going to help them get pregnant. That's actually really poor use of the research that's available. The reason I say that is because all too often patients come with garbage bags full of supplements that they have been told by different providers or a Facebook group or Google that they should be taking to support their fertility. And there's a lot of research on all of those supplements, but how does that apply to you as an individual? And that's super important. When you're taking 20 supplements and you're not sure if one supplement contradicts another supplement, you may actually be doing more harm than good. Or even worse, you potentially are taking all of these supplements and you're not absorbing them because maybe the supplement isn't the highest quality, or maybe it's the wrong form. For example, if you take N-acetylcysteine in its incorrect form, just as L-cysteine, it's not going to do anything. N-acetylcysteine is going to help support the liver. It's going to help support detoxification. It's going to help support and be a precursor to glutathione. So, in terms of understanding what supplements do and how they interact, there is a science to it. It's not as easy as, oh, it's natural, so let's all just take all of these things. In reality, you could be doing more harm because a lot of these supplements, if especially if they're poor quality supplements, have tons of fillers and preservatives, and those things are actually putting a strain on your body, on your liver, to process those things out. So it's unfortunate when I see people come in with garbage bag full of supplements and they're like, well, I don't know what happened, but 3 months ago my period went away. That is the kind of things that we deal with all the time, because something that they added in, something that they took that someone else said was going to be good for them, was actually not the right thing for them. And it's so important that if you are going to supplement, if you're going to take herbs, if you're going to even take something as simple as maca, which so many people tell me that they put into their smoothies every morning, if it's the wrong thing for you, it will have a negative effect on your fertility. And I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm not saying this to create red flags. I'm more saying this as a way for you to be mindful about what it is that you're adding in and who it is that you're getting this information from. All too often, I see people asking, even me, I'm on Facebook groups and I cannot offer you advice on Facebook groups, but people will ask and say, hey, can I take this? And my response is, I know nothing about you. I don't know what your hormones are doing. I don't know what your nutritional levels are at. I cannot say yes or no because I have no idea how this thing is going to apply to you as an individual. So I hope that I've made that point clear. This is coming with a lot of compassion. Like, I get it. I know you guys I know you guys are out there just looking for one shred of hope, something new to do, one thing that you feel like, oh, if I add this thing, this is going to be the magic bullet. And I wish there was a magic bullet. I wish there was one thing, hands down, that I could repeat over and over and over again that would get people pregnant. But there isn't. There is not one pill. There is not one supplement. There is not one herb that every single person should take, because in my experience, I have seen a lot of people's hormones messed up from taking lots of different things that they did not need. And that is so important, to make sure that anything that you're doing, if even if it's your reproductive endocrinologist who says, here's a piece of paper with that we suggest everyone do for their fertility, to me, a light goes off in my head and says, what do you mean, everyone? Because even for diet, there's no one perfect diet that is going to serve every single person struggling with fertility. So it's really, really crucial for you to know that when you're taking advice, you're really doing it with someone who is understanding all of you as a whole human, mind, body, and spirit, and you as an individual and a couple that is on this journey to conception. They have done some testing, they understand how to interpret those results, and they can say, if we tweak this little thing here, we're going to get the impact that we want. So I'm going to share some success stories soon about what some of those things are and how these have been implemented for people so that we can best support the people that we work with. And we want to know for a fact, we want to know for certain that the things that we're doing are going to help people get to the goal that we want them to get to, which obviously everyone that we're working with wants to get pregnant. Um, so, all right, let's get into it. Story number one. This one is probably one of my favorites because this is a young woman. I say young, she's 30. She was 38 when I started working with her. She was now 39. And so we've been working together for quite some months. And when she first started working with me, they had had 3 pregnancy losses. They had been to multiple different reproductive endocrinologists. They had been through IVF cycles that hadn't worked, and they had been through reproductive endocrinology immunology testing to understand if there were immunological factors that were contributing to her fertility. And what we found in the process of discovery, our first phase is called reveal. This is where we want to understand what is happening under the surface. So, because fertility and quote unquote infertility is not a diagnosis, infertility just means that you cannot get pregnant in the allotted amount of time that it's suggested for you to try to get pregnant. For women over the age of 35, that amount of time is 6 months. For women under the age of 35, it's 12 months of trying consistently and not being able to get pregnant. Now, this is not a diagnosis because it doesn't tell you anything about what's happening and why someone can't get pregnant. It just says you can't get pregnant, so you must be quote unquote infertile. I have a big problem with that because without understanding, for example, if someone was diagnosed with hypertension, quote unquote, that is a word that actually tells us exactly what's happening. It still doesn't tell us why it's happening, but it tells us that there is a symptom, there's a specific change in the body that's measurable and repeatable to get this diagnosis of hypertension. And the way you get this diagnosis of hypertension is you have 3 consecutive readings that are above normal for blood pressure. When your blood pressure is consistently elevated, it means that you have hypertension. In the case of fertility, again, it doesn't tell us anything. So, what do we do? Our first phase is called reveal. And reveal is the phase where we want to fully understand each individual as a couple. So, the couple that comes to us, we sit down with you guys for an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, to fully understand all the areas of your body, understand all of your symptoms, and then decide on what tests are going to help us to understand what it is that's happening under the surface for both of you that is potentially causing an issue or potentially delaying your ability to get pregnant. Once we are able to understand, then we have a better perspective or a better plan and strategy to help create something that is tangible science-backed and is going to help support you getting to the goal. So, this woman, 38 years old, she had, again, quite the journey. By the time she got to us, they had already been trying to conceive for over 3 years. And like I said, they had been through multiple IVF cycles. They had been to an immunologist, and the immunologist said, "Oh, wow, you have all of these immune factors going on. This is never going to work for you. And you should probably look at egg donor." And so she came to us desperate for support. When we started doing our reveal, our kind of diagnostics, we decided that her main things were potentially inflammation coming from the gut. Gut inflammation affects uterus and causes potentially uterine inflammation. So that was our first stop. And then the second stop was nutrient deficiencies, which likely because her gut was not in an optimal state, she was not going to absorb nutrients as well as she should for fertility. So those were our first two things. The second thing that we determined was that we needed a deeper analysis of her hormones, because when we started with her, her hormones looked okay, but there was a question for me whether or not her hormones were really okay, because she did not have the kind of fertile menstrual cycles that I would expect to see in someone that had great hormonal balance. So we did what we often do, which is a urinary metabolite on hormones, and we do that for an entire cycle. So it's super easy because you're peeing on these strips multiple times over the course of a month. And once you collect all the samples, you send them off to this lab, and the lab gives us a sense of how are these hormones being metabolized through the different phases and through the different parts of the cycle. So what we found out for her was that she had definitely not enough progesterone production, and her estrogen was being metabolized suboptimally, meaning that her estrogen was metabolizing in a way that wasn't conducive to fertility. She was getting stuck at phase 1 metabolites, which means that her estrogens, E1, E2, and E3, three different types of estrogen, were coming out of her body, but getting converted to these more inflammatory estrogens that were not being excreted out of the system. So she had a buildup of these inflammatory metabolites causing an issue. The last thing that we decided to address was her partner, who had suboptimal sperm morphology, and often sperm morphology is connected to nutrient issues. So for him, we had to figure out which nutrients were deficient and were going to be most helpful in helping to make better sperm. Now, we worked on this for almost a year. At about the 8-9 month mark, they got kind of tired of waiting, and they said, "Hey, we're ready to do another IVF cycle. We'd really like your support with that." And I said, "Okay, no problem. Let's do an IVF cycle to figure out what it is that we can do to support you." And what we ended up doing was they only needed some minor tweaks, and they went into their IVF cycle And we felt pretty good about the cycle. They actually got pretty good eggs. And they turned into embryos. So they had a relatively good cycle, only to come back for the implantation, and the implantation did not go as planned. So at that point, we had more data. We had the understanding that, hey, your body made good embryos, but it didn't take. So to me, that triggered a aha. And I said, we should probably look at your vaginal microbiome, because if you have microbial imbalance, it will sometimes make it really hard for implantation to go well. And sure enough, her vaginal microbiome showed a lot of dysbiosis. That means it's a fancy way of saying that there's a lot of bacteria there that shouldn't be there. We went forward with doing a protocol to get rid of the abnormal bacteria and repopulate with the good bacteria. And she went in for another implantation cycle, and that one took. So after 3 years of being on this journey of doing what she thought was doing everything that she knew to do, she was open and willing to really take a look at her diet, her lifestyle. They literally were open to doing whatever we told them. And that's super important because our program is not easy. It is not for people that are like, give me two things and that's it. That's all I'm willing to do. It takes a lot, but because we're working with people that so often are on very intense journeys, who have tried literally everything else, the way that we work is really figuring out what are the key things that we need for you to do that are going to give the best results. And what was really beautiful for them is that she, before before even her IVF, her first IVF cycle that failed with us, she had gotten to the point of being less anxious. When she first came in, she was this anxiety driven woman who was constantly stressed, didn't know what to do, how can I fix it? And but by the time she ended her journey with us, she was actually at the point of relaxing, trusting her body, and knowing that the things that she had done, the work that we had put in, was going to result in a healthy baby of her own. So for her, like I said, what was really crucial was the gut healing, the reproductive microbiome. Stress was definitely a big component of it. Stress is always a component of it. And then egg and sperm health, which were super important. Now we move to the next success story, if I may. Our next success story is she's actually 41 now. This is a woman or a couple who were in their like 39, 40-year-old range when they came to see us, and very similar, had been through quite a long journey, quite a long amount of time trying to conceive, and it hadn't worked. For them, it was things that were slightly different. So I would highlight, I mean, gut health, I feel like that's a priority for everyone. But for them, it was gut health combined with a lot of stress, a lot of stress. And for them, we actually created little hacks that they could do throughout their day to support their stress levels, to shift the anxiety, and to really improve egg and sperm health through the things that they were doing. So we did a lot of diet, lifestyle, herbs, and supplements to help support their healing process. And it took about 1 year before we gave them the green light to start trying. And they got pregnant soon after that green light. And then, okay, so the last couple that I want to share is a couple that was so this couple, the woman was 35. I believe the partner was right around the same age. And when she came to see me, her hormones were way out of whack. They had been trying for 3 years again. They thought that they had done everything. At the point where we met, they had only done 4 IUIs, and they weren't really sure that they wanted to do IVF. So they were unclear what it is that was creating issues for them. And she had been diagnosed with PCOS, which made for very irregular cycles for her. So she only was menstruating every few months, every 2 to 3 months or so. And her hormones were so much fun. Her FSH was 5.1, which sounds very, very normal. Her estradiol was 192, which is crazy high. And for her, when you have a really high estrogen level, it actually suppresses the FSH. So the FSH sounds like it's normal, but it's not actually normal because it's being suppressed by the estrogen. So that was true in her case. And then her LH, which I thought was a typo. So I asked her multiple times, I said, "Are you sure this is the number?" And her LH was 42.8, which is insanely high. And then, get this, her AMH was literally the highest I have ever seen for any person ever. Her AMH was 59.7. And again, multiple times I asked if that was actually the right number, and she definitely sent me her labs, and that was exactly what it said. So when we started working together, I knew that one of the biggest pieces for her was going to be PCOS and normalizing and optimizing her cycles. And then when I met the couple, I noticed that her partner was actually extremely obese. So I knew that there was going to be some factors on his side. And it turned out that his sperm was less than optimal, and he knew that he needed to lose weight. His weight was also affecting his self-confidence, and he was finding it really hard to maintain an erection and have a good ejaculation. So as we started working with them, we knew that there were two sides to this, and we really were going to need to support the woman to have better hormonal balance, and for him to lose some weight and get his confidence back and essentially get his mojo back. So we worked on both of those things for only 3 months. They went through all of the different processes that we do, and maybe it was about 4 months where she had her first normal 29-day cycle, and she was ecstatic. She was like, "Oh my God, that's the first time in my life that I've had a regular period." Uh, and and then the very next cycle after that, they had an oops pregnancy. So they got pregnant very quickly, because she didn't realize that she was back to having a regular cycle, which meant her ovulation had shifted quite a bit to a normal, like 12, 13, 14 day of to sorry, to shifting to ovulating on cycle day 12, 13, or 14, which made it very easy for her to conceive because all of a sudden she was ovulating when she needed to ovulate. And they got pregnant, no problem. Her partner actually reports that he lost 30 pounds in the process, without trying or making any effort whatsoever to lose weight. And he went on to actually have amazing revival of his mojo, his confidence, and a much healthier sex drive as well. Those are our sample success stories, or I should say, those are our awesome success stories for this year. Those three couples are probably my favorite because some of them had tried for so long and had worked on this for so long that it was just such a treat to be able to finally get them to the point where they could start their families. So, this is what we love to do, and we are here to support you if you want some support from us. You can reach out to us on Instagram at Holistic Fertility Doctor, and we'd be happy to chat with you to see if you could be someone that we can support to the next fertility success story. Stay tuned for all of my favorite tips to helping you get pregnant naturally. Was that an amazing episode or what? Make sure to check our show notes so that you can link up with our guests. And if you're not a part of our secret Fertile AF community, you can join for free via the link in our show notes. Last but not least, have you showed us some love lately? It would mean the world to us if you could share and review our podcast. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time on Egg Meets Sperm. Peace.